Hello everyone friends, today we have a new video with a new diorama. As you can see, I finally bought a new cutting mat. Now my old black mat will be used exclusively for painting, as I no longer mind getting it dirty. I once made this base, but didn't use it. So I decided it will be perfect for my diorama featuring the Panzer III tank and events in Africa. However, as you can see, the sides of diorama don't look very nice, even with the added wooden panels. To make them more attractive, I decided to glue on thicker balsa wood panels. As usual, I used double-sided tape to attach the balsa wood to all four sides of the diorama. Then trimmed the edges to make it look neat, and after that I removing any other excess. Here is the result. I also reinforced the corner of the diorama with superglue. I think it's additional protection and it's important. Now we can move on to creating the first element on our diorama. Using small stones and superglue, I tried to make an authentic well, based on photos I found online. To ensure the well was the right size, I used one of the main characters of the diorama, a figure that I haven't painted yet. Since it's still hot in my apartment, the glue didn't work well. It strangely wouldn't bond the stones and didn't react with them. Perhaps it's due to the quality of the glue, or the material I was using didn't interact well with it. Despite this, I managed to give the well some shape. Fortunately, the height is sufficient to simulate a well built somewhere in North Africa. Next, I used various tools to make a hole in the diorama, as wells in Africa are usually dug very deep. This detail is crucial because it adds realism and interest to the diorama. Once the hole was ready, I added several stones, again using superglue. Then I added additional details such as old boards. This small part adds details to our well. And after that, I cut a bamboo stick into smaller pieces to create a tripod for the rope used to draw water from the well. To make the well look more realistic and stable, I added some stones to hold the wooden sticks in place. You might also notice some small particles around the well. This is baking soda. I used the baking soda and superglue to strengthen the structure and prevent it from collapsing. As mentioned before, my superglue didn't work properly, and I didn't have another option, since I only had plastic model glue left, which isn't suitable for this material. Now our first detail finished. I think this well turned out quite good. Of course, I could have added more detail, like rope or bucket, but I decided to create a scene where soldiers arrive at the well but don't have the necessary rope, and they discuss how to solve this problem. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me show you how I made the palm tree for this diorama. I have several palm tree options, but I decided to go with a date palm. The first step was to make the leaves for this palm tree. The technique for making these leaves is quite simple. You'll need some thin wire and paper tape. Place the wire in the center of the tape and fold it in half, so that the tape sticks together and the wire is securely held between the layers. Then, using scissors, shape the leaf and make numerous small cuts, as date palm leaves are not solid, but consist of many small leaflets. It's probably more accurate to say they look like feathers. As you can see, this step is done with scissors, which is very convenient because the wire prevents cutting too much. The cuts turn out deep and effectively mimic a date palm leaf. I noticed that the first leaf was too wide, but that's not a problem, I'll correct it later. For now, one leaf is ready, but off camera I had to make another 10. So in total I ended up with 11 leaves. This number is quite sufficient for simulating a date palm in 1/72 scale. As in this scale, the palm doesn't need to be overly detailed, or it will distract from other elements. Also, the process of making the palm could have taken longer, and I wouldn't have been able to upload the video on time. Now, enough digressions, let's move on to creating the trunk for this palm. For this, I'm using Milliput, a two-part epoxy material. This time I choose white, but I also have a yellow alternative. And I want to say it's better to use yellow or add acrylic paint to the white, as working with white material can cause issue with painting. But that's a problem for future me. Right now I am mixing this two-part epoxy to create the material for making the trunk of our palm tree. As you can see, the first trunk turned out too large, so I will make a second, smaller one. But the main question is how to texture the trunk. For this I use the regular medical bandage. I wrap the palm trunk with a bandage, leave them like this for about half an hour, then remove the bandage and let the trunk dry completely. The next day I got an excellent result. Look at the wonderful and varied texture created by the simple medical bandage. This technique can be used if you need to create texture on any trees. For example, it works great for pines. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm correcting the mistake with the palm leaves and giving them a more accurate appearance. Now my palm doesn't look like it's from the Pacific Island. Once the work on the leaves is done, I use a hand drill to make 11 holes in the palm trunk. Here is another advantage of using wire. First, it allows us to securely glue the leaves in place, and they will hold very well. Second, the wire lets us shape the leaves as needed, and they won't change shape even if you accidentally bump the palm tree. And if you do bend the leaves, you can always bend them back to their original position. Meanwhile, while I was talking, I finished gluing all the leaves. Here is how the palm looks without paint. As you can see, I can easily shape the leaves without damaging them. Before painting, I decided to add another detail using the leftover leaf scraps. I don't know what this part of the palm is called, but if you look at the photos of African date palms, you can see old leaves that gather closer to the top. I aim to mimic this using finely cut paper. I hope it turned out well. For me, it's a good detail. Now my palm is ready for painting. First, I used brown primer to prime the entire palm, including the leaves. This is necessary because the leaves are made from slightly shiny paper, and without priming, a single coat of paint would be enough to cover the shine. After the primer dried, I mixed German Camo bright green paint with a bit of golden yellow to get a richer green color. I needed to carefully paint all the leaves to avoid large brown patches. I intentionally left small spots to make the effect of old leaves. I think it adds some detail to our leaves. And when the bottom of the leaves was done, I applied the same color to the top of the leaves. And here is the result. After that, I added a bit of German yellow and applied a lighter shade to the top of the palm leaves. This adds variety to the appearance of the leaves and gives them an extra effect. Plus, they won't look too dark, resembling palms that might be found somewhere in Pacific Ocean. Additionally, I decided to paint the core of the palm with a dark yellow color. For this, I mixed chocolate brown, German Camo bright green and golden yellow. Combined with the green color of the leaves, it looks fantastic. I also mixed a pale green color into the main leaf color and used a dry brushing technique to lightly paint all the leaves. This gave them a more faded and dried out appearance. However, I didn't make the leaf too dry, since the palm grows close to the well, meaning it has constant access to water. Now that the palm work is finished, I can proceed with priming the diorama and the figures. For this, I am using primer from Vallejo. However, I made a mistake when buying and ended up with glossy primer instead of matte. This is actually a big problem, because I prefer a matte finish, and the glossy primer could create additional difficulties. Although the primer itself is a very high quality, even the glossy primer works well for priming figures. For my diorama, I decided to use my old primer. It's also black and slightly shiny, but still more matte. For the base color of the ground in the diorama, I choose Flash Base. I think it's perfect for simulation in African surface. After the base color dried, I added a bit of German yellow to the base color and applied a lighter shade to the rod to create the effect of light sand and dust. I also applied this effect to the certain area of the diorama to add more variety to the ground texture. Then I moved on to adding grass. Initially, I wanted to use dry grass as it's natural for a desert landscape, but I decided to add contrast and used pre-prepared green grass. This is also realistic, as green grass can grow near a palm tree in Tunisia. Once this stage was complete, I decided to add even more variety to the ground texture and bring more life to other elements. Using the dry brushing technique, I painted the rocks, as well as the larger rocks, and the stones used for the well. Then I quickly painted the wooden parts of the well and added all the objects to the diorama. This means it's time for the showcase. And I know, you might think this video is short, but unfortunately I accidentally deleted the footage showing how I created this base from scratch. However, it would be a crime not to use it. Just look at how perfectly this base fits with the setting of our diorama, the model I painted, and this wonderful palm tree. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, as always, I'd appreciate a like and a comment. If you have any question about how I painted any of the elements, feel free to ask. You can also leave a comment with constructive criticism. I'm quite open to it. I always appreciate your advice. All useful links can be found in the video description. How to make similar grass, how to paint figures in 1/72 scale, and how I assembled and painted this tank. Goodbye for now and see you next week.